of CI and the head of, but the top management, I was with them yesterday. They're still in the bush, trying to work on some matters. So I'll start with General Advocate Dr. Libea to introduce himself, and then we move.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members. Lieutenant General Libea, the National Head of the DPCI.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, Honorable Members. I'm Lieutenant General Yoli Samatakat. I'm the Deputy National Head of the DPCI. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members. Lieutenant General Tsumani, Crime Detection, Deputy National Commissioner.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, Minister. I am Lieutenant General Jacobs, the National Head of Crime Intelligence. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Minister, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. I'm Major General Lidwaba, the Component Head, Serious Organized Crime, DPCI.
Morning, Honorable Chair and Members. I'm Brigadier Klaba, Serious Organized Crime, DPCI.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, and members. I am Major General Kana, the Component Head for Serious Commercial Crime within the DPCI.
Honorable Chair, members, my name is Motamane in the Office of the Minister.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant General Retired Advocate Leonard Mack, Special Advisor to the Minister of Police.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, Senior Officers. I'm Brigadier Senona from Detective Services, Head Office, Component Organized Crime.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, and the Minister. I am Major General Mboto. I'm the Component Head of one of the detective components. Thanks.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, the Minister, and Honorable Members. I'm Brigadier Basi from the DPCI.
Morning, Honorable Chair, Members, Minister. It's Brigadier Angwan Mrawzi from the DPCI.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, Minister, Senior Managers of the Police, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brigadier Vish Naidu. I'm Corporate Communication in the SAPS, and I'm the National Police Spokesperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Santako, can they maybe just introduce themselves? Thank
Minister,
you.
one person, Miss.
Yeah, Minister, Divisional Commissioner, Detective General Musikidi, she's with us. She's just so on the phone outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Santako, you're welcome, sir.
Good morning, Honorable Minister, the Chairperson, and members. My name is Philip Daibos. I'm the President of Santako, the South African National Tax Council.
Good morning, Chairperson, Minister, Honorable Members. My name is Tabisho Mulelekwa. I'm the manager in the President's office and also responsible for communications.
Good morning, Chairperson, Minister, and the Portfolio Committee. I'm Aras Lenzwane, the Secretary General Santako.
Morning, Chairperson, Minister, and all dignitaries. My name is Bafana Makakula. I'm the Chief Strategic Manager for Santako.
Good morning, my name is Noni Yebert and I'm the legal advisor.
Thank you very much for the introduction of the delegation. We appreciate your participation in today's meeting.
Just one more. General Musikidi is back, who heads detectives. And Vishnai to introduce himself as a spokesperson for the National Commissioner. I do have a spokesperson for the Minister of Police, Serrero. That's a spokesperson for the Minister of Police. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we know who's each other in the venue. Thank you very much, Minister. Honourable members, maybe just the one issue in terms of the public domain, and we'll give an opportunity for the various parties to comment. Members will remember at the previous interaction with the National Commissioner and the National Management, we raised our serious concern about the safety at police stations after the incident in Kobo, where the policemen were tragically killed. And there was an undertaking given by the national management that they will introduce steps technology-wise, but also from an operational point of view, to improve safety at police stations. Because we saw also in the case of the Eastern Cape at Nkobo, firearms that were stolen and other threats. We've seen over the recess 2 incidents, one in Karedo, where also firearms was taken by the attackers, and we also saw the incident in Mtata 2 days ago. That really raises the concern whether these steps are bearing fruit. Are we seeing the necessary action? Myself visited two weekends ago also a police station on a Saturday evening, and the lack of the necessary technology and tactical measures is a serious cause of concern, also for the members. So I think from the Portfolio Committee side, it's quite critical that we get an undertaking from the Minister and his team that this matter is really getting the necessary attention, and who is responsible for the implementation of that at provincial level. If it's the provincial commissioners, what's being done to ensure that there is the necessary support given to stations, and is the necessary management, the consequent management being executed by your commanders in the various provinces. That's quite critical. So that's just from our side. I want to put that on record. Let's give an opportunity also to the members to deal with that issue. Honourable Mbele.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think just briefly to echo your sentiments, this is an ongoing and long-standing concern. And it really speaks to the shortcomings in the basics, really, of management within the SAPS in many respects. Because the securing of infrastructure, ensuring adequate training for members to have equipment, to have the knowledge, and to have the measures in place to mitigate those kind of risks is sorely lacking. Honorable Kola Barnett and I did an oversight visit at Zanin police station 2 weeks ago, and what that highlighted was the way in which other stakeholders in government let the SAPS down, in particular public works, when it comes to infrastructure maintenance, upgrading, revamping, where an entire half of the front street-facing side of the police station has got dilapidated, collapsed fencing because a heritage site that is next door hasn't been completed and the fencing has been stolen. So literally anybody could actually drive a van right up that ramp onto the premises and cause havoc. So we really need the tightening up of the coordination between departments, accountability for those who are failing in their duties, and then obviously for SAPS to get their contract management and their supply chain management rights where needed.
Thank you, Mbele. Any other members? Honourable Kalabana.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly over this period and previously, with my colleague to my left and others and alone, I visited a number of stations, and I think security is amongst the top issues. Frequently it is, I agree, the issue of public works doing nothing, not putting up fencing, there's no protection, they sit there, there's no wall, there's no protection, there's nothing, but equally so, there's no private security. and the private security contracts were torn up and scrapped about 4 ministers ago. And since there's been an issue. One can't have operational members wasting their time signing people in and out, but there is zero security for the officers, especially 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, you have one person sitting there on their own, everything's open, people can stroll in from any direction. So it really calls for a major meeting between SAPS and Public Works to get Public Works working, and good luck with that. But also perhaps consider in some of the really high-risk areas giving them a short-term private security contract until something can be done. Because no one who looks up and has a firearm pointing at their face must die to protect firearms. I'm sorry, your life is your life. So they inevitably hand over what they've got. And yes, there must be investigations, because we have seen issues where they've pulled a bag of firearms out from the counter and handed them over. There were arrests made there of people who were complicit. But in these instances we're referring to, it is criminals using the stations as an ATM for firearms. And no, SAPS officers must not die for protecting the station, but the station equally is the responsibility of management, who just haven't stepped up and done their duty to protect the officers.
Thank you very much. Any other members on that topic? That's the only members. Thank you very much. Minister of Police, can you respond? Thank you.
I thought the question was on the management. But here we are.
You can delegate.
No, I'll try to. No, thanks for the concern, which is a concern for all of us. Is a real concern. As members visit stations, some of us we do visit stations, and I visited one station from the township where I come from. There were 5 police officers, but as we were there was a shootout between criminals and the police, and then the criminals did not die, so were taken to hospital. 4 members immediately had to go to hospital to guard the criminals. So 1 member was left in the station. What is the station? Khrobo, the one in PE? Khalabo. There was 1 lady officer there as these criminals came. She was just alone. 2 of them were making the rounds, the patrols. Tata were 2 members when these criminals came. Thanks God that these last members were not killed. They should have been killed themselves and all that. So there are several matters. Honorable Member Kolapana talks about public works, talks about the police. There is one department that you should be talking about, treasurer. Treasurer will have to be really brought on. 2010, there were almost 200,000 members of the South African police, and 52 or 54 million South Africans. Now we're 191,000 with 57.3 million South Africans. With the additional foreign nationals that are not mentioned within 57.3. The figure there is acute. Others, they put it at 11 million of those, some documented, some undocumented foreign nationals that are there. So you can put the South African population immediately beyond 60 million. So it's a contradiction, Chair. So we had this 200,000, which that time gave us about 329, if I'm not mistaken. Now it's almost 1:700, 1 single officer to the population. Hence, I'm saying treasurer will have to be brought in on this one, because without fixing these figures, police, it can be technology and everything, but you can't have robots policing. So technology, yes, will come, but it will be forever a human intent kind of activity. So we will have to look at the increasing of the numbers of the police officers, which we are trying to do. Looks like we are agreeing with the top management led by the National Commissioner that at least at the soon or earliest training we need to get at least 7,000 people that will have to be trained, trying to maintain the 2010 figures, let alone from 2010 up to now. Retain and maintain the 2010 figures. But again, if you train 7,000 to 10,000 people at a go, there is one big thing that will be missing there. That will be your experience. Because you put 10,000 new people in the organization. Most of the experience is found as you go on, rather than at the college and academies and all that. So we agree that there will have to be some form of a re-enlisting. Those that they have left the organization, they have to. Some of them will have to come back, especially at the level of detectives, at the level of the people that have been there. That you are not going to spend more time on them and more energy training them. It will be easy. Those that speak English, they say hit the ground running. So we will, we are looking at that in terms of personnel. But in terms of technology, again, we are looking at it, which takes us back again to the treasurer. But the infrastructure of the police is one thing to look at it, and really doesn't give much hope. The Ngwavuma police station is completely condemned. Police have been told to get out of it. So public works will have to. But not only that, the many offices, head office in Pretoria, we have several buildings that we need to move people around. The hawks themselves are all over the show. Rather than having the building that they go there, they work. He must wake up in the morning and look around, where are his people, all that. The question of infrastructure is one of the biggest problem. That Waghuis, if you go to it, any office that is supposed to have 2 people in it, they are between 3 and 5, and they are all under the pile of papers. We just pray that there is no fire one day in that building. So the infrastructure, the police and their safety is one of the big issues that we are trying to take forward. It will be with the cabinet. We're preparing our memo. It will be with yourselves to come and brief what do we think should be done, where we can be supported to work on those matters. The training of the police, the proper numbers. You can't, in the middle of the night, somewhere in the isolated place, have one lady officer sitting alone there with the ATM, as you say, the gun ATM, because these criminals, they do want these guns. So is a well understood problem. We need to find answers. There's no use to know it without, but we are working on that. We will be calling on the portfolio committee what is our way forward, if we could be supported going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you, Minister. I think it will also be appropriate, I think we welcome the input from the Minister and also the commitment by the National Commissioner for the 72-hour activation plan after these incidents. The big issue is still the issue of proactive steps. So the National Police Management is next week with us. So if we can on Wednesday from the National Commissioner maybe get just a briefing on the measures, technology, tactical, that is currently underway. That will be appreciated. Thank you very much. Members, we will now continue to the next item. That is the briefing by the DPCI on the turnaround strategy and also the high-profile cases. General Bia, you're welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. The presentation overview deals with the introduction serious corruption, will come to serious commercial crime, serious organized crime. Under those headings, we will deal with the turnaround strategy, the status of the state capture, the status on vendor building society, mutual bank, Steinhoff, illegal mining, Verula Mosque, and KZN bomb threats, the sea resources. These matters will be dealt with on a very high level, as you will appreciate that they are still under investigation. Coming to the introductory remarks, corruption is a serious hidden phenomenon in our society, as both parties involved want to keep their transactions a secret. It frequently occurs in government institutions and at state-owned entities. The types of corruption mostly commonly experienced are irregularities in procurement, which remains most prevalent form of abuse of power. We are strengthening our working relationship with stakeholders in a multidisciplinary approach. The promotion of whistleblowers within government institutions with guaranteed protection so as to encourage their willingness to report corruption. We are intensifying awareness within government institutions and other institutions that play a role in reporting crime. We identify the complex dynamics of investigation by breaking them into legs or phases to enforce the accomplishment of the short, medium-term and long-term achievements. With regard to state capture, certain cases are being highlighted, starting with the Johannesburg matter that deals with the Transnet fraud, corruption and money laundering. This involves 38,600,000,000 rands. The details and of the suspects have not yet been fully identified. On the summary, the case relates to the procurement of 1,064 locomotives, of which 465 are diesel and 599 are electronic locomotives. It is alleged that Transnet Special Board Committee ceded its powers to a subcommittee known as the Board Acquisition and Disposal Committee to approve the tender of the acquisition of the said locomotives. The tender was then awarded to Bombardier and China South Rail, who then inflated the price. They had failed to deliver, however, the state funds were paid. The status is that the search and seizure was conducted at the Bank of Baroda on the 8th of June this year. A forensic firm is appointed to assist with the analysis and financial flows in conjunction with the DPCI financial investigators. 6 Section 205 subpoenas for the banks and Transnet have been served. 6 witness statements have been obtained. Information from the CIPC has been obtained. A report regarding frozen funds is under consideration by the South African Reserve Bank. The next case is dealing with the Tegeta and Eskom Trillion Mackenzie matter. This deals with fraud, corruption and money laundering that involve Eskom. The amount involved is 2,409,000,000 rands. The details of the suspects: there are 3 natural persons and a company that have so far been identified. The case relates to prepayment by Eskom to Tegeta for the purchasing of Optimum Coal Holding, amounting to 659 million rands. That was facilitated via the Bank of Baroda. The case further relates to the misuse of a rehabilitation trust fund of the Kuren Fontaine Fund in the amount of 280 million rands that was transferred upon instruction to a Bank of Baroda account. An instruction, an additional rehabilitation trust fund amounting to 1,469 million was also transferred into the Bank of Baroda. The current status is that information of 767 bank accounts have been received as a result of the Section 205 subpoenas that have been served. 3,800 sources of information are under assessment. 33 CIPC documents have been received as a result of Section 205 subpoenas that were served. An audit firm is busy with the analysis of documentation received. Over 1,800 pages of documents have been received from Eskom with the relevant witness statements. Over 40 witnesses for the initial phase have been identified. Some of them are being interviewed. Some have already been interviewed. The next one is the Sunnyside matter involving money laundering with a company called SAP South Africa. The amount involved is 106 million rands. The details of the suspects are that there are 5 natural persons that have been identified, as well as a company. The summary is that the system applications product SAPSE Germany became aware of the allegation of possible wrongdoing by SAP South Africa through reports in the media. SAPSE appointed attorney's firm to conduct preliminary investigation on these allegations. The firm of attorneys filed a report to the DPCI in terms of Section 34 of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. SAPSA was awarded contracts by Transnet and Eskom to provide IT software packages to both entities. An amount of 7,410,000,000 and 99,227,000,000 were respectively paid to procure the sale of software and services to Transnet and Eskom. CIPC alleged that SAPSA contravened the Companies Act as well as the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act. The current status is that one search and seizure operation was conducted. Section 205 subpoenas have been served to the banks and information required has been received. The DPCI financial investigation are analyzing this document. 2 CIPC statements have been received and the FIC report has also been received. The investigation is continuing. The next case is deals with the fraud, corruption and money laundering involving Homix Pty Limited. This involves an amount of 270 million rands. The details of the suspect is that a company and a natural person have been identified. The case was reported to the South African Reserve Bank and relates to a company known as Homix that was used as a conduit for money laundering to support a certain family and associates. A number of companies transferred large sums of money to Homix, who then transferred the same to 2 companies in Hong Kong. the status is that 6 witness statements have been obtained, 3 bank statements that were served with Section 205 subpoenas have been complied with, and the investigation is continuing. The next one is a fraud, corruption, and money laundering that has to do with the Friede Dairy project and Estina. The amount involved is 284 million. 284,202,000 rands. The details of the accused have been listed. The 8 accused have been listed. A company known as Estina entered into an agreement with the Free State Department of Agriculture to establish and implement and manage a dairy project in Friede, the Free State province, to benefit previously disadvantaged persons and uplift the people of the Friede area. In terms of the agreement, Estina was to provide a capital injection of 228 million, which never happened. The said amount was transferred to the Bank of Baroda and thereafter paid to Oak Bay Investment and other different companies and individuals that are not related to Friede Dairy projects. The latter companies and their directors did not have any business relationship with Estina or Friede Dairy projects. The status of these matters is that 302 bank accounts reports have been received as a result of Section 205 subpoenas that were issued. 139 witness statements have been obtained. 2 search and seizure operations have been carried out. The services of an auditing firm have been procured, and they are currently analyzing the flow of funds. Once the mutual information from the mutual legal agreements have been received, the money flow will be completed. 8 of the indicated accused persons are out on bail of ranging between 10,000 and 200,000 each. The next court date is this Friday. The next matter deals with the fraud and corruption that was reported in Sandton in July 2017. It involves an amount of 396 million rands. The details of the suspect are that there are 3 natural persons that have been identified. On the 22nd of June 2017, a case of fraud and corruption was reported against a certain company which had received contracts and or tenders from Eskom through alleged influence of the then acting CEO of Eskom. One of the directors of this benefiting company is related to the then acting CEO. The current status of the case is that investigation is continuing. We are awaiting analysis of the collected evidence by the auditors firm that has been appointed. The next case is a Rosebank case of contravention of the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act, as well as the Cape Town inquiry. The allegations are that certain persons were offered a position of finance minister by 3 individuals who are not constitutionally empowered to do so, with the possible expectation of gratification. In these matters, one person has been, the attendance of in court of one person has been secured. 20 witness statements have been obtained. 4 Section 205 subpoenas have been served. Witness personal identity diary has been secured. The presence of the accused has been secured as indicated, and such person is out on bail. The matter has been postponed to the 25th of January next year. The next one is Brooklyn, contravention of the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act. One suspect, a natural person, has to date been identified. It is alleged in this matter that Sahara Computers Company, which is associated with a certain family, paid trips and accommodation to Dubai and India, municipal accounts for the then chairperson of Dinel. VR Laser Company, which is associated with the same family, would have entered into joint venture with Denel to form Denel Asia. The National Treasury have intervened, and the venture did not materialize, which is why the loss is potential. The current status is that evidence requested by Section 205 subpoenas have been obtained from the banks. The 5 witness statement, Denel and municipalities are still outstanding. The investigators are busy obtaining this information. The next matter deals with the serious corruption, that is the VBS Mutual Bank. There are cases that have been reflected, 5 that has been reported. Mostly it deals with the contravention of the Municipal Finance Management Act, fraud and other acts, violation of other acts. The parties that are involved include VBS Mutual Bank, the various municipalities, mostly in the Vembe area. There is an amount of more than 311 that has been lost. The number of suspects that have been identified is more than 3. The identification continues as the investigation goes on. The summary of this is that monies were invested in VBS Mutual Bank by more than 10 municipalities, but those 10 of these municipalities are in Limpopo. This was done in contravention of the Treasury instructions and the Municipality Finance Management Act. Some of this investment were done before the Treasury give an instruction which will not constitute the violation of that Treasury instruction. The current status is that reports by the South African Reserve Bank and the Provincial Treasury have been received regarding the investigation into VBS and the municipality. There are various investigations that legally the Reserve Bank is supposed to do, and on conclusion this will be provided to the SAPS. A summary of the alleged persons and the companies involved have been compiled from the reports, and these are on hand in the docket. Information has been requested from CIPC in respect of other company names that have been identified. The bank accounts processes are still under consideration by the relevant institutions. Further information regarding identification are still awaited. There is a team of 10 detectives that are working on specifically this matter. We expect that by the end of September, the report from those institutions that are assigned to do the investigation will be available. The next matter deals with the Steenhof. Steenhof International Holdings is a company registered in the Netherlands with secondary listing in the Johannesburg Security Exchange. It is a holding company for Steenhof Investment South African Lake that is listed in the JSE. 3 dockets have been received by the DPCI, and the report in terms of Section 34 of the PRECA Act has also been received. The allegation include 3 charges in 3 dockets. Those are contravention of the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act, fraud and general corruption. The allegations are that during 2014-2015 financial year, Stain of Investment Holdings has been submitting false, misleading or deceptive financial statement to attract investors in contravention of Section 81 of the Financial Markets Act. Upon discovery, the value of the shares dropped significantly, placing investment at risk. The matter is under investigation. There are various bodies that are on board working on this matter. The NPA, the Special Commercial Crime Unit, the South African Reserve Bank, the Department of Trade and Industry, Financial Sector Conduct Authority, Independent Regulatory Board of Auditor, the JSE, the police on police-to-police mutual assistance via the Interpol. There is a multidisciplinary approach in dealing with this matter. The 3 complaints docket received were only based initially on media reports, and Section 34 report followed thereafter. A request was made through Interpol to have access to certain investigation relating to Steinhoff abroad, and the police-to-police information is continuing. Response has been received, which we are working on ensuring the implementation of that agreed investigation. The expected report from the auditor's firm is to indicate the crimes precisely committed and the legal assistant that will assist in drafting the affidavit. On the 11th of July, the investigation team met with the auditing firm and the appointed prosecutors and the regulatory bodies to deal with this matter. They are, as I indicated, working on the finalization of the relevant affidavits.
General, in the other slides you indicated there are suspects. Is there any suspects been identified by DPCI with relation to the Steinhoff matter?
With regards to this particular matter, because it is at the initial stage, we are not dealing with the identified, although we have got an idea who the possible suspects are. We haven't clearly concluded that this is our suspect, so we are looking broadly at this stage. The next item is the attack on the Verula Mosque, and as well as the bomb threats that were occurring in the province. The background is that there are cases that have been identified to be linked. The status of the investigation, the progress, and the comments. There has been a surge in bomb threats and explosion during May, June, and July in the eThekwini in north and the Durban central areas. This has necessitated the establishment of multidisciplinary task team that include various stakeholders, the intelligence, the analysts, the prosecutors, and the investigators. There are 10 matters that are conclusively identified as having linkages. We need conclusive evidence to be presented before the National Prosecuting Authority before a certificate can be issued to prosecute the offender in terms of the Proctor law. An aborted attempt to attack a mosque in Didier, Gauteng, on the 31st resulted in one suspect being arrested. A 36-year-old man who previously resided in the Verulam area was arrested and charged under Section 33 of this Act. The suspect appeared before court on the 2nd of August, and the matter is continued. The matter is postponed, and then the accused is appearing in court. The next is the illegal mining, which is a summary of the activities that have been embarked on in the 2017 up to 2018. The key trends, the strategic intervention, the constraints, and the way forward. And we will conclude with the remarks. To appraise these honorable members of the Portfolio Committee regarding the key development and in South Africa on the illicit mining, operational successes have been achieved for the period of April 2017 and June 2018. This Honorable House will recall that a briefing was previously done in August and November last year, so this one will just be a short, a summary overview, will not deal in detail. Illicit mining is a pervasive and highly lucrative global enterprise. Illicit mining poses a growing threat to the national security and economic prosperity of the country. Cognizance needs to be taken of the State of Nation address by the State President, His Excellency Dr. Ramaphosa, where he expressed the government's commitment to prosper through the mining of our natural resources to the benefit of all. Strengthening the integrity and security of the precious metals and diamond supply chain is key to mitigating this scourge. The DPCI is leading an interdepartmental initiative under the National Coordination and Strategic Management Team to collaborate, address this threat following a multidisciplinary approach. Illicit mining causes serious harm to the legal mining sector, socio-economic development of producing countries, and its environmental impact places on local communities at risk. It capitalizes on and increases vulnerability of the precious metals diamond supply chain through the infiltration of transnational organized crime networks. This is often accompanied by different cross-impact serious crimes such as corruption, illegal immigration, human trafficking, smuggling, child labor, environmental crimes, firearms, and explosives. It occurs mainly in the dormant and operating mines. It ranges from subsistence scale to more highly organized illicit mining ventures. South Africa is seen as one of the transit hub and a market for precious metals and diamond in Africa. Diversifying to other mineral resources such as chrome, wesselite, and tiger's eye. This also provoke wars between rival zamazamas that at times result in death and violence. There are various hotspots that have been identified in which the operations are focusing on. In the past, there has been disruptive operations that were conducted. I have just reflected for the period 2017-2018 financial year.
Sorry, just a moment. I just want to make an appeal to members and visitors. If you want to have a conference, you're welcome to go outside. We don't want our presenters to be interrupted. You're welcome to go ahead, General. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The financial year 2017-2018, as well as the first quarter of 2018-2019, this just shows the number of operations that are being conducted at the identified hotspot areas. It will be seen that the first quarter of 2017 was 30, and then this first quarter was 24. The next slide deals with the successes that emanate from these operations. The first quarter was 116 arrests, and then the first quarter of 2017, as compared to the first quarter of 2018-2019, which is 332 arrests. Emanating from these operations, there are also the assets that are confiscated. Preservation orders are granted as we work jointly with the asset forfeiture unit, as it shall be observed at the top there that an amount of 12 million orders have been granted with regard to that. So it both include preservation order as well as forfeiture orders. That is how we work closely with the asset forfeiture unit. The next slide continues with the forfeiture orders and the preservation orders that continues from the previous slides. In this page it shows 1 million in the first quarter of this year. There are significant operations that have been conducted at various areas. I've just highlighted some of them, like the operations that have been conducted on the 15th of March 2018 under the code name Project Hauda. There one will observe that the suspect 4 were arrested. A total of 72 worth of PGM material were recovered. The next one was conducted on the 19th of January, which focused on illegal mining on Crow. Meticulous investigation resulted in the arrest of 3 of the managers in this mine and subsequent confiscation of the equipment. In the same slide, on the 4th of May, a multidisciplinary operation was conducted at Hlageni village to address illegal mining of gold. In this regard, 33 illegal miners were arrested and various equipments were seized. In the next slide, a joint operation was conducted in Matola informal settlement, which is known to be an area targeted by illegal miners. 33 illegal immigrants were arrested, of which 1 was for possession of gold-bearing material. 33 small houses were dismantled and approximately 5 million of material were seized. An intelligence-led multidisciplinary operation was conducted at Denver Hostel, resulting in the arrest of 11 illegal miners. An estimated amount of 800,000 worth of gold-bearing material was seized. The next slide, it just shows the emerging trend with regard to the various tools that the criminals design in order to search and extract material, precious metals from the soil that they collect from the mining. So precious metals and gold-bearing materials are being collected by a group of people in Ekurhuleni Central and in the East area. I will not deal with all of this, but it just shows the various tools that they use to extract this material from the soil that they extract. Part of the strategy that we have is to ensure the training of our operators. We are not working alone. We work with other institutions at the UNICRI, where, as an example, a three-day training workshop was conducted that deals with the trafficking of these materials, that also focused on transnational leg of these organized criminal activities. Our legal services, our own DPCI and Visible Policing have been involved in training, mostly in the affected areas. There is also an area where our legal officers are working on those loopholes that have been identified in the Act to ensure that the loopholes that the criminals utilize are closed. Part of the constraints is that the training need to be provided to many of these stakeholders that are working with precious metals to be able to identify these substances. As I indicated, legislative gaps are being addressed that deals with the transit area. We are working on that one. Corruption is also affecting some of the achievements that are supposed to be coming forth. Illegal mining activities that are perpetrated, among others, illegal miners. Persistent and abandoned mines also posed this danger, which is part of the constraints. Poor attendance in some of these meetings where methodologies of operating are being discussed and operationalized. The way forward is that the body that the DPCI is chairing is reviewing the APP operational plan to ensure that there is more focus.
Over the years, which resulted in loss of money, excessive charges being imposed, or middle persons being involved in the supply of equipment or goods or services to these entities. And so far, in the case of Eskom, they've recovered the 902 million rands from McKinsey, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done in relation to some of the other entities like Regiments, Trillion, and others that have entered into contracts with Eskom as well. There are also very so-called reputable companies that haven't quite featured in the public domain yet, particularly in relation to IT systems. I think we saw some of that during the inquiry, T-Systems, for example, SAP as well. And so that's another area of interrogation that still needs to be concluded as we go forward. Not only is the board undertaking some of this investigative work, but as you know, the SIU and others are also undertaking one or other kind of forensic investigation as we go forward. The next slide indicates that despite the problems that we've had at Eskom, with the appointment of the new board and executive and the turn of events in the country, there is a higher level of optimism as far as Eskom is concerned amongst the investor community. They have been able to raise funds to place themselves in a better position in relation to liquidity. In the last few weeks, the Eskom team has been on a roadshow to the UK and the US, and they've successfully concluded a 1.5 billion rand international, that's dollars, international bond. And some of the issues which investors raised with the Eskom team are the ones listed here. Would you have continued government support? What is the future role of Eskom? How are you going to collect municipal debt? The unsustainable cost structure, which I indicated earlier on, and some of the announcements around debt equity swaps in relation to the PIC, for example. The board has been asked to submit a new strategy for the next 5 years by the end of September. We've had one joint consultation in this particular regard, and more will follow. And we'll brief the committee as soon as we've reached some point, not only within Eskom, but within government as a whole as we go forward. The next entity is Transnet. The Transnet AGM takes place later this afternoon in Gauteng. But you also have a new board. In the case of Transnet, what you have before you on the slide that's on the screen is, again, a 5-year overview of Transnet's performance. And of particular concern, as I said, is administered prices, both in terms of freight and in terms of port charges. And clearly the the Transnet management and board have become very aware of some of the inefficiencies in the freight logistics system. In recent times, there have been a number of derailments which have been costly not only for Transnet, but costly for mining houses and the country, because once you have a derailment that is not fixed up in a rapid period, then it impacts upon exports from the country, and that impacts upon the current account balance at a macro level. There are similar issues of performance and productivity in the ports as well, which Transnet will have to deal with in the near future. So you can see that Transnet performance against the shareholder compact is less than satisfactory, but there are serious issues that have emerged out of 3 forensic reports that are now before the board in relation to the so-called 1064 transaction, where you had an increase in cost from 38 billion to 54 billion. And the people responsible for that are being looked at by the board. And more generally, contract management and deviations, similar to the ones I indicated earlier on about irregular expenditure, will begin to emerge here as well. The one thing that Transnet and Eskom were both reputed to have is interference by the board in procurement, and that is something that we've now dealt with. Whilst the board will have oversight to ensure that processes have been followed correctly and the law has been followed correctly, they cannot, as they have had in the past, interfere and decide upon how procurement allocations actually occur. The next slide looks at some of the changes that have been made. The new board appointed in May 2018. The CFO resigns shortly after, Mr. Peter, and we have an acting CFO in the case, in the instance of Mr. Mohammadi, who has been at Transnet for many years. Improved oversight on contract management and deviations, the forensic investigations which I indicated to you earlier on, removal of board members from adjudication of procurement contracts, and criminal charges have been laid at the door of SAPS and the Hawks, and a review of procurement and other processes has been undertaken by the board as well. The next slide gives you an insight into the board and the kind of balances that we have, both in gender terms and in age terms as well, although that's not properly reflected here. But once the Transnet AGM takes place, Chair, there will be more details by the time Transnet reports to the committee on what needs to be done. But Transnet is a very crucial entity, just as Eskom is for the economy, because a large percentage of our exports consist of raw commodities, and any disruption of that process in the freight rail system would be having a negative impact on the economy. Similarly, the export of manufactured goods would have an impact as well. And then the efficiency of our ports is also absolutely crucial to ensure that our ports remain competitive and highly efficient, because there are similar facilities being developed elsewhere on the African continent. And if we are not at par, if not beyond par, in terms of our performance, we'll begin to lose ground very easily to neighboring port facilities that are being established. We then move on to SA Express.
Can you just take a sip of water for a second, Minister? It's Women's Month. I cannot have women standing for such a long time. There are 2 empty chairs. Can I have those chairs being offered to the back? Can you join this seat so that she can get a seat? No, it's fine. I'm talking about that lady behind you. To come to the right hand side.
Yeah, it should be the men pointing that out, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for that support, Minister. We are settled now. Thank you very much. You may continue, Minister.
So my apologies, Chair. I'm busy looking at the paper in front of me and not realizing women are standing. SA Express, as you know, has been grounded, but we are in the happy situation where all of the processes that are necessary to get it flying again have been concluded, and the first flight